anniversary, but to get this guest tonight is just a real coup because this movie has become so popular. It's right at the very pinnacle of popularity. It rivals a Star Wars picture or even a Indiana Jones picture. It's that popular. It's extremely popular. Great film. People can recite dialogue. I meet people that say lines to me back and forth. That's how it's become part of our pop culture. And Frank Darabont, the director of the picture, I met 22 years ago in 2003 when my hero and mentor who helped me start these events, Ray Harryhausen, got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And among the celebrities there and film people were there to greet him and honor him, I sat next to was Frank Darabont. I had a chance to talk to him for a little bit. So much I love his films, particularly this picture. Very humble man and a really talented person, as you know, I all know from seeing this movie. How many people have seen this film at least 2 or 3 times? Applaud. 10 or 12 times. 100 times. I'm just kidding. I've never seen, has anybody here besides me never seen this on the big screen before? Have any of you seen it on the big screen? Really? It's so rarely shown on the big screen. But for number 52, I thought, how can we be any better than having this here and our great guest? I want to bring you back in just a second. Bob Gunton is a stage and TV and big screen legendary character actor. The guy is brilliant. Who can forget him as the wonderful Warden Norton, huh? Such a nice guy. But he does much more than just that. He's been in so many other films, Stallone, Demolition Man, and so many things he's done. He's original, Juan Perón and Evita on Broadway. I think he was the original one. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. But a better way to get started than this, just to get him out here right now. We'll sit and do some talking and do a little thing he wants to do first with his gift basket. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Bob Gunton.
See, they're a good group. That's a tribute to Johnny Carson. May I say something before we start?
Sure.
With questions and answers. I heard Bruce ask how many had seen multiple times. Is there anyone here who hasn't seen Shawshank?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to do a little thing here before we start, and I promise I won't give you any spoilers. Although you've probably heard from all your neighbors, when he does the thing I was presented when I got here with this beautiful basket from the cookie company. And as you can tell, I don't need any more cookies. Also, getting that on an airplane and taking it back to LA ain't gonna happen. So I'd like to thank them and you for coming by awarding that basket to the person who can identify the character, those of you who've seen the movie. Now we all know Andy, right? Tim Robbins. Do we know Ellis Boyd? Yeah, you didn't know that, huh? And Haywood, Bill Sadler. Then there's Captain Hadley, the nasty, nasty guard. And then a beautiful James Whitmore playing Brooksy. God bless his soul. Boggs, who was the serial rapist and head of the Sisters. And Tommy Gil Bellows, sweet guy. Saw them all last year when we celebrated the anniversary. There's one other character that I would like to ask if anybody knows, and if you could wait until, is someone coming around with a mic? Is that? Okay, well you may have to shout.
We'll have that later.
But if you raise your hand, I'll call on you when I ask this question. If you think you know the answer, and the first person to give me that answer will get their cookies, as we used to say in high school. There is a character that a lot of us found very, very touching. And not too many people know his name, maybe even the cast members. But does anybody here remember Jake? Oh. I think somebody does. Let's see a hand. Okay, the first lady. Well, that wrapped that up. You'll see, those of you who haven't seen the movie, James Whitmore's character very lovingly feeds his feathered friend Jake maggots from the meals. Anyway, we can now proceed. I've gotten that out of my system. Congratulations, madam.
I want to thank David and Ronnie Fell, the cookie company, for making that basket. Good stuff. Too much to put on a plane, though. Well, let's get started. How did you get the role? Quick, can you tell us a backstory how you got this role to be the warden?
I went like every other character guy in Hollywood who got the script, read it, and said, "This is brilliant. I got to be in this movie." So there were a lot of people who read for all of the roles, including the two leads, and which I don't know that much about. I do know that there were some very big names like Tom Cruise, who was considered for the role of Andy. I think that would have been terrible casting. Can you hear me all right? Can you still hear me all right? No? Okay. Those of us in theater always think that we can fill the hole with our voice, but I guess not. So there was a lot of interest in this, and I got called in by a casting director who was one of my favorites. She reads so beautifully with the actors. And when I got the script, I don't know why, but I said, I know who that SOB is. I know him. He's not me, but I know him. And so I worked very hard on it, came in for the audition. Frank Darabont was there, and one of the producers, and he had me read all the scenes. And actually I memorized it, which I don't always do, but, and I could see in his eyes that, yeah, this is the guy. I really did. That happens very seldom. Normally it's, yeah, we'll call you. So anyway, I walked out of there saying, geez, I think I got this. And then I started getting a little scared. But a couple of days go by, nothing. And the producer calls me and said, now this was a production of Castle Rock, Rob Reiner's production company. And Rob had actually wanted to direct the movie himself and offered Frank gazillions of dollars if he'd give the rights to direct, and Frank said, no, I wrote it, I know what it is, I'll go to another studio. I said, oh, no, that's right. So anyway, the producer says, you know, everybody loved your reading, they showed it to all the suits, and a couple of them said, yeah, he's a terrific actor, but I just don't see him doing it, you know? So Frank said, okay, we'll screen test him. And I was doing Demolition Man at the time. I was totally bald, which scared the hell out of my cat. I went home and so I didn't want to audition bald because I knew if I did the role, I would have to age 20 years. And if you start out bald, there's no way to go. And so I told them that, and they had this wonderful woman in the San Fernando Valley create a wig or toupee or whatever the hell it was. Beautiful job. And so I could wear that for the screen test. And they also asked Tim, by this time, who had been selected as the star, asked him to come to New York too, to read opposite me, not on camera, but just off camera. And Roger Deakins, the cinematographer of the movie, also came to New York and to run the camera and do my screen test. And they were all very gracious, and Tim was very gracious. And I went home and I went back to Demolition Man for a couple of days, and I got the call from my agent saying, "You're the guy." So that's how I got it.
Now you're in the story. I'm a big fan of music to the movies. I think Tom Newman's score for this is one of the most beautiful I've ever heard. Very moving.
Brilliant. And you know, I think that's one reason why when many of us walk into our home some afternoon when, you know, kids are playing the TV and you hear that haunting theme from Shawshank, and it's like, I gotta watch this.
You're hooked. You hooked you.
Even if it's in the middle of the movie,
Yep.
you've seen it 10 times, you know exactly what's gonna happen.
Yep.
You want to see it happen again. And I'm the same way.
And you're in it. Where do you find the impetus to be a nasty person like this? What was your focus to be such a nice man? How do you focus to be so evil? Where does that come from?
Well, I've had a lot of practice, not me personally, but of the roles I've played.
Sweet
And you know,
Todd.
in Hollywood, they used to refer to us as, well, who's going to be the heavy? And the heavy was usually the guy who's like 4 inches taller than the lead and maybe 20 pounds heavier and looks like he could beat the crap out of him, and that's the bad guy, and I filled most of that, most of those necessities. But no, I just knew from all of my experience, from people I knew, from people I'd observed, from other movies, all of these, I knew who this guy was. And as a matter of fact, before we began filming, I wrote a backstory for him. It helps me to put buttons in that when I'm playing a role, that I can go back to find his shame about something, the early parts of his life where being connected with law enforcement was important to him. He married a woman who was a real holy roller, and she was lovely, and he had to marry her. All of this stuff is in that story, and so as much as I absorbed the script, I also absorbed that backstory, and that was who Warden Norton came out of.
Is it hard to get into character and to get out of character when you're working on a film like that? Do you keep that negative attitude? How do you get rid of it? Like a method actor. Method actors, you know, they live that part.
Yeah, I've done things when I didn't want to drop character, mainly because I was doing an accent, and it's hard to drop in and out of doing, for me, like a Spanish accent or a Russian accent. You want to keep it in your mouth, so when you report again, you can do it again. So, but otherwise, when the day's over, I go home and beat my wife.
No, that's method acting.
Please, don't anybody tell her I said that.
The AP's gonna report that tomorrow.
You know, they say, and I don't know whether I'm an example of it or not, but they say the nicest guys in Hollywood are the ones who play the badasses. And it's true in my experience, the people I met, like Clancy Brown, who was the nasty guard, is the sweetest guy in the world. He was just married. He was married. He was just about to have his first child, and we had had our daughter, and so we were, back back of the set talking about changing diapers. And then he'd come out onto the set and blow someone away.
This is a 2-hour and 20-minute movie, so I think it'd be a good idea if we get some people to ask you some questions. So this movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes long.
Yeah.
So let's cut to some people in the audience here. Janelle, are you available to get the microphone? So Bob can get some questions from some of the fans here. Janelle, one of my great sponsors and friends. Janelle Cleveland. We can probably do a few questions before we start the movie, so I'll let you pick somebody, Janelle, because we can't see.
Okay, who has a question? All right, let me come around there.
Be way in the back, of course.
Get my steps in.
Yep.
Okay.
That light is so bright.
Where am I going? Okay.
These lights are like the guns in Navarone.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello. I just have 2 quick questions. One, is your backstory that you wrote published anywhere that we could see or read?
It is part of a memoir I have completed, but have not submitted yet to a publisher. But I do include it, and nobody's read it but me. And so when the book is released, all of the dirt will come out.
We can't wait. And then secondly, did you have any preconceived notions about the prison system prior to taking this role? And did you have any ideas that changed after completing this role?
Very good question.
Thank you.
I was in the seminary for a couple of years in Baltimore, and we used to visit the poor sections of Baltimore, and also we made a couple of visits to the prison there, which was not terribly modern, and this was back in the, I guess, late 60s, mid to late 60s, and that was my closest actual interaction with a prison system, and it was nothing like Shawshank. I mean, as far as I know. And as a matter of fact, they had built a new modern prison about 1/8 of a mile behind the one that exists there now. And I talked to the warden and asked him. He was a sweet guy, you know. Everybody playing cards and hopscotch. So it wasn't quite the same. It wasn't quite the same as Shawshank. All I knew about prisons was I don't ever want to be in one. Now, what was the second part? That's it?
I think, did you change your opinion was her question.
Not really, but you know who was dealing with the prison system is Tim Robbins. Because right after we finished Shawshank, he was in pre-production for Dead Man Walking. And there was actually a scene that we had together, the one when he's been in stir for, a month or something. And I come down and tell him about Tommy, terrible thing, but we have to move along. And his next line is something, it's all gonna stop. And as you'll see in the movie, he is like a flickering candle. He is just barely able to talk. There's rats running around, but he's absolutely defiant. And that's what pisses off the warden. And he throws back a word that you probably all know, that this uppity bank clerk had called him, and that was obtuse. But the way that we first rehearsed that, he got up and yelled and screamed and looked like he was going to attack me, and I just walked out. And the scene was gone. There was nothing to do. Give him another 30 days, break him down some more. And so we had to have a little discussion with the director, and my notion, I think prevailed, is that it was either going to die or with his last breath say, and you will see, if you haven't seen it, it's a brilliant scene, and he's wonderful in it, and it begins the whole journey now of what he's going to do about things. So I think Tim was already thinking about the issues in Dead Man Walking, and that somehow affected his notion of what he would do if he was in prison. But he came around to the other way, and as I said, I think he was brilliant in it.
Okay, we have a question right here.
Thank you for being here. I just wanted to ask you, do you think your character was always corrupt?
No, I think that, like with many of us, the stuff that happens to us when we're young, unless we process it well, comes to haunt us in our lives when we run into crises. And he was corrupt. He didn't view himself as corrupt. That, you know, he made excuses for why he deserved to be making the money that he was illegally. And he addressed the inmates very politely before he nodded and have someone beat the crap out of him. But nobody views himself as evil or as the bad guy until everything starts falling apart, and then we see that this is a very torn apart guy and gets his comeuppance.
One more question.
Okay, we've got a gentleman right here.
Hi Bob, thanks so much for coming tonight. I'd like to ask you about your character on 24, Ethan Kanan. He was a very respectable young man. And could you give me just a quick idea of how your role was on 24? You were on 24 for quite a few years.
Yeah, the interesting thing for me was I was the first character who reappeared in 3 different positions. I started out as Secretary of Defense, Ethan Kanan, then the Chief of Staff to the newly elected female president, who had done The Perfect Storm with me. We had spent days in a yacht and got to know each other quite well. She was a brilliant, brilliant theater actress. So we had something going on already. We had a relationship. And then the 3rd year, I was Secretary of State. And that was one of the few times where I got to play something really close to the best. The guy was intelligent. He was braver than I am, but methodical and could absorb any situation that he had to deal with, including his heart attack. And I really enjoyed playing him. Normally, the good guys, and he's the only one that didn't end up either dead or in prison by the end of the 8th season. So I was hoping they'd bring me back as president. I think I had earned it. I called myself the Dick Cheney of 24.
I think we should wrap this up pretty quick here. Bob's going to be out on the autograph table after the movie. You're going to sit and watch the film. And you just limit it to less than an hour, right? And it's a $20 donation to whatever you have them sign to the Parks Foundation people. That's what you want.
Yes, and I'm delighted to be able to do that. And I'm delighted to be able to make a little contribution to the charity that we are all championing tonight.
Before we leave, please. You have pose for pictures with them too, fans?
Yeah, come by if quick picture, you know, arms around, as long as you're completely clothed. Because in Hollywood, you don't touch people without their permission. And so I hope I have group permission to put my arm around.
I also want to mention too that Dog and Pony Productions, Mike Gilstrap, who's a new door projection for us at the film, is 4K digital restoration we're going to be showing tonight. 4K digital restoration. So this will be the first for people who don't want to see on the big screen, the restored version. And even if it's a dark movie, but it'll look beautiful. Well, I know you maybe don't want me to say this to the audience, but I have to say this. This man is a Bronze Star recipient from the Vietnam War. He's a standing.
The only thing I wanted when I left was a ticket home.
Well, on with the movie.